हाय बच्चों, कैसे हैं आप सब। तो यहाँ पे हमने 100 तक हमने देखा था इस बुक की, इस बुक का नाम है लाइफ प्रोसेस। तो यहाँ से हम लोग शुरू करते हैं। ओके, सो यहाँ क्वेश्चन है व्हाट आर द डिफरेंस बिटवीन ऑटोट्रॉपिक। इसको मैं थोड़ा हाईलाइटर दे देता हूँ। ओके, सो व्हाट आर द डिफरेंस बिटवीन ऑटोट्रॉपिक न्यूट्रिशन हेटेरोट्रॉपिक न्यूट्रिशन। तो ऑटो मतलब क्या होता है, ऑटोमेटिक्स होता है। So those animals who make their own food by themselves using sunlight, water, is called as autotrophic nutrition, and the process in which the organism take their food depending upon other organism is called hetero. Hetero मतलब दूसरे से और auto मतलब खुद से. So where do plants get each of the raw materials required for photosynthesis? तो जो raw materials होते हैं वो generally water होते हैं, हम सनलाइट होता है, क्लोरोफिल होता है, तो ये नेचर से मिलता है, ठीक है, एनवायरनमेंट से मिलता है। ओके, व्हाट इज द रोल ऑफ द एसिड इन आवर स्टमक। तो एसिड क्या करता है, जो फूड पार्टिकल्स होते हैं उनको वो ब्रेक करता है छोटे छोटे पार्टिकल्स में, सो दैट दे कैन बी डाइजेस्टेड इजीली। ओके, अब व्हाट इज द फंक्शन ऑफ डाइजेस्टिव एंजाइम। तो एंजाइम जस्ट लाइक एक्ट्स लाइक अ कैटलिस्ट, जो कि डाइजेशन में हमारी हेल्प करता है। दूसरा है हाउ इज द स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन डिजाइन टू ऑब्जर्व डाइजेस्टेड फूड। सो स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन क्या करता है, वो फूड को डाइजेशन करने में हेल्प करता है और जो प्रोटीन है उसको डिकम्पोज करता है, या उसको कहिए कि उसको तोड़ देता है ना। सो दीज आर सम द क्वेश्चंस, यू माइट आंसर देम, और रेफरेंस के लिए थोड़े नोट्स और जो बुक में है वो चेक कर लीजिएगा। हम यहाँ शुरू करते हैं रेस्पिरेशन का। सो रेस्पिरेशन इज वन ऑफ द इम्पॉर्टेंट लाइफ प्रोसेस, ठीक है। तो यहाँ पे एक एक्टिविटी दी होगी, टेक सम फ्रेश प्रिपेयर्ड लाइम वाटर इन टेस्ट ट्यूब, blow air through the lime water, note how long it takes for the lime water to turn milky, use a syringe or pichkari to pass air through some fresh lime water taken in another test tube. Now how long it takes the lime water to turn milky, what does it tell us about the amount of carbon dioxide in the air that we breathe out. So this is pichkari, this is about its lime water. Okay, but you so this is happening. Okay, so we have activity 6.5. Take some fruit juice or sugar solution and add some yeast to this. Take a mixture in a test tube fitted with one hold cook. Fit the cork with a bent glass tube. Dip the free end of the glass tube into the test containing freshly prepared water. What changes are observed in the lime water and how long does it take for this change to occur? What does this tell us about the product fermentation? तो जो बेकरी शॉप्स है वहाँ पे ईस्ट का इस्तेमाल किया जाता है। ईस्ट क्या करता है, फर्मेंटेशन के प्रोसेस में हेल्प करता है। ओके, सो इट हेल्प्स इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ फर्मेंटेशन बेसिकली। तो हमें ब्रेड बनता है, फफूंद बनता है, एंड दैट इज द रीजन जो ब्रेड होते हैं या फिर जो कुकीज होते हैं दैट सो फ्लफी इन नेचर। स्पेशली अगर आप पेस्ट्री या केक खाओगे तो फ्लफी होता है ना, इट्स लाइक थोड़ा फुला हुआ सा रहता है। सो दिस इज जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ पुटिंग ईस्ट इन इट, ताकि वो फर्मेंटेशन प्रोसेस से वो कर देता है, उसको फ्लफी बना देता है। चलिए अब नेक्स्ट देखते हैं क्या है। We have discussed nutrition in organisms in the last section. The food material taken during the process of nutrition is used in cells to provide energy for various life process. Diverse organisms do this in different ways. Some use oxygen to break down glucose completely into carbon dioxide and water. Some use other pathways that do not involve oxygen in all cells. The first step is the breakdown of glucose, a 6 carbon molecule, into 3 carbon molecules called as pyruvate. So 3 carbon molecule is called as pyruvate. Okay, this process takes place in cytoplasm. Further, the pyruvate may be converted into ethanol and carbon dioxide. This process takes place in yeast during fermentation. Since this process takes place in the absence of air oxygen, it is called as anaerobic respiration. Breaking down of pyruvate using oxygen takes place in the mitochondria. Mitochondria को हम लोग पावर हाउस भी कहते हैं। ओके, सो हम इसको थोड़ा ध्यान रखेंगे। ओके, फाइन। सो नेक्स्ट अब देखिए क्या कह रहा है। Process breaks up 3 carbon pyruvate molecules to give 3 molecules of carbon dioxide. The other product is water. Since this process takes place in the presence of air oxygen, it is called as aerobic respiration. The release of energy in this aerobic process is a lot greater than the anaerobic process. Sometimes when there is a lack of oxygen in our muscle cells, another pathway for the breakdown of the pyruvate is taken. Here the pyruvate is converted into lactic acid, which is also 3 carbon molecule. Thus buildup of lactic acid in our muscle during sudden activity causes cramps. तो जो cramps है okay, so when you put it's hey fine, तो ये क्रैम्प्स जो है लैक्टिक एसिड के फॉर्मेशन, तो यहाँ पे एक डिटेल में बताया गया है, ये चार्ट में देखते हैं कि क्या बताया गया। सो ग्लूकोज 6 मॉलिक्यूल कार्बन, साइटोप्लाज्म की प्रेजेंस में क्या होता है, पाइरुवेट जो है 3 कार्बन मॉलिक्यूल्स होता है प्लस एनर्जी निकलता है। अब जब एब्सेंस ऑफ ऑक्सीजन होगा तो ईस्ट में क्या होता है, इथेनॉल प्लस कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड प्लस एनर्जी बनता है। लैक ऑफ एनर्जी यानी जब ऑक्सीजन नहीं होगा तो इसको क्या कहते हैं, एनारोबिक रेस्पिरेशन। इसमें लैक्टिक एसिड प्लस एनर्जी फॉर्मेशन होगा और प्रेजेंस ऑफ जब ऑक्सीजन प्रेजेंट होगा तो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड प्लस वाटर प्लस एनर्जी, तो ये बेसिकली होते हैं। ठीक है, 3 चीज। अब यहाँ देखिए, the energy released during cellular respiration is immediately used to synthesize a molecule called ATP. ATP क्या है? Adenosine triphosphate, which is used to fuel all other activities in the cell. And this process, ATP is broken down, giving rise to a fixed amount of energy which can drive the endothermic reactions taking place in cell. Endothermic कौन सी reaction होती है? वैसा reaction जिसमें कि heat required होता है। अब ATP क्या है? एडिनोसिन ट्राइफॉस्फेट, ट्राई मतलब क्या, 3 मॉलिक्यूल्स। अब देखते हैं क्या लिखा हुआ। ATP is energy currency for most cellular process. The energy released during the process of respiration is used to make an ATP molecules from ADP and inorganic phosphate. तो ADP प्लस एनर्जी, ये ADP इक्विवेलेंट टू फॉस्फेट इक्वल टू ATP बनाता है। P is phosphate. Endothermic process in the cell then use the ATP to drive this reaction. When the thermal phosphate linkage in ATP is broken and use water, the energy equivalent to 50.35 kilojoule mole is released. Think of how a battery can provide energy for many different kinds of uses. It can be used to obtain mechanical energy, light energy, electrical energy, and so on. Similarly, ATP can be used in the cells for the contraction of muscle protein synthesis, contractions of nervous impulse, and many more activities. ठीक है, तो ये है ATP के बारे में थोड़ा सा डिटेल्स था। अब शुरू करते हैं यहाँ से। Since the aerobic respiration pathway depends upon oxygen, aerobic organism needs to ensure that there is a sufficient intake of oxygen. We have seen that plants exchange gases through stomata and the large intercellular ensure that all the cells are in contact with their carbon dioxide and oxygen are exchanged by the diffusion here. तो प्लांट्स में जो रेस्पिरेशन होता है वो डिफ्यूजन की प्रोसेस से होता है। चलिए नेक्स्ट में देखते हैं। They can go into the cells or away from them and out into the air, the direction of diffusion. ठीक है, depends upon the environment conditions and the requirement of the plants. At night, when there is no photosynthesis occurring, CO2 elimination is the major exchange activity going on. During the day, CO2 generated during respiration is used for photosynthesis. Hence, there is no CO2 released. Instead, oxygen release is the major event at that time. ठीक है, अब animals have evolved different organs for the uptake of oxygen from the environment and for getting rid of the carbon dioxide produced. Terrestrial animals can breathe oxygen in the atmosphere, but animals that live in water need to use oxygen dissolved in water. Terrestrial जो animals होते हैं, terrestrial so terrestrial जो होते हैं ऑर्गेनिज्म, उनके पास एयर में भी ऑप्शन है कि वो ब्रीदिंग कर ले वाटर में भी। ठीक है, तो चलिए ये देखते हैं। Observe a fish in aquarium. They open and close their mouth and the gill slits or the operculum which covers the gill slits behind their eyes also open and close. Are the timing of the opening and closing of the mouth and the gill still coordinate in the same manner? Count a number of times a fish opens and closes its mouth in a minute. Okay. Compare this to the number of times you breathe in and, तो कह रहा है कि एक जो फिश जितनी देर ब्रीथ करता है और जो ह्यूमन करते हैं उसको कंपेयर करने के लिए इसमें तो हम मोस्टली पाएंगे कि ह्यूमन जो है वो 72 टाइम्स है ना, 72 टाइम्स ब्रीथ करते हैं पर मिनट। इसको भी डिलीट करेंगे। ओके, so since the amount of dissolved oxygen is fairly low compared to the amount of oxygen in the air, the rate of breathe in aquatic organism is much faster than that seen in the terrestrial organism. ठीक है, fishes take in water through their mouth and force it past the gills where the dissolved oxygen is taken up by the blood. Terrestrial organisms use oxygen in the atmosphere for respiration. This oxygen is absorbed by the different organs in the different animals. All these organs have a structure that increases the surface area which is in contact with the oxygen rich atmosphere. Since the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide has to take place across the surface, this surface is very fine and delicate. In order to protect the surface, it is usually placed within the body. So there have to be passages that will take air to this area. In addition, there is mechanism moving the air in and out this area where the oxygen is absorbed. In human beings, air is taken into the body through the nostrils. The air passing through the nostrils is filtered by fine hairs that line the passage. The passage is also lined with much mucus which has this process. From here, the air passes through the throat and into the lungs. Rings of cartilage are present in the throat. These ensures that the air passage does not collapse. ठीक है, अभी देखिए ये एक डायग्राम है। ये हो गया नजाल पैसेज, यानी जिसको नाक कहते हैं, नासिका, माउथ कैविटी जहां से हम भोजन लेते हैं। ये फिरैक्स, फाइरेक्स, तो एक नली हो गई, भोजन नली, ये लिरैक्स, ठीक है। इसको कहते हैं ट्रैकिया, ये हिस्सा, ये भी एक जो नली हो। रिंग्स ऑफ कार्टिलेज, इसमें देखिए छोटे छोटे जो कण हैं, मतलब गोल गोल वलय की तरह, तो ये हैं रिंग्स ऑफ कार्टिलेज, ठीक है। अब ये हैं लंग्स, ये हैं रिब्स, रिब्स है ना, जो बॉक्सर खेलते हुए कहते हैं कि रिब्स पे पंच करो, सो रिब्स। ये है एल्विलाई सार, ब्रोंक्यूल्स, ब्रोंकी। अब एल्वियोली का यहाँ पे डिटेल डायग्राम है, ये रेस्पिरेटरी ब्रोंक्यूल्स में बंट जाते हैं। तो ये है एक डायग्राम ह्यूमन रेस्पिरेशन सिस्टम का, ये अक्सर आता है, तो इसको आप थोड़ा प्रैक्टिस कर लीजिएगा, ठीक है। अब नेक्स्ट हम पढ़ते हैं। Within the lungs, the passage divides into smaller and smaller tubes which finally terminate in balloon-like structure which is called as alveoli. Singular alveolus. The alveoli provides the surface where the exchange of gases can take place. The walls of the alveoli contains an extensive network of blood vessels, as we have seen in earlier year. When you breathe in, we lift our ribs and flatten our diaphragm, and the chest cavity becomes larger. As a result, because of this, air is sucked into the lungs and fill the expanded alveoli. The blood brings carbon dioxide from the rest of the body for the release into the alveoli, and the oxygen in the alveolar air is taken up in the body by the alveolar blood vessels to be transported to all the cells in the body. During the breathing cycles, when air is taken in and let out, the lung cells contains a residual volume of air so that there is a sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed and for the carbon dioxide to be released. When the body size of an animal is large, the diffusion pressure alone cannot take care of the oxygen delivery to all the parts of the body. Instead, respiratory pigments take up oxygen from the air in the lungs and carry it to the tissues which are deficient in oxygen before releasing it. In human beings, the respiratory pigment is hemoglobin, which has a very high affinity for oxygen. This pigment is present in the red blood corpuscles, yani RBC. Carbon dioxide is the most soluble in water than oxygen is, and hence it's mostly transported in the dissolved in our blood. Okay. So these are some points about hemoglobin and how the respiration takes place. यहाँ पे कुछ एक फैक्ट है, देख लेते हैं। इन द alveolar surface were spread out, it would cover 80 meters square. How much do you think the surface area of your body is? Consider how efficient exchange of gases becomes because of the large surface available for the exchange to take place. If diffusion were to move oxygen in our body, it is estimated that it would take 3 years for a molecule of oxygen to get to our toes from lungs. Aren't you glad that we have hemoglobin? Yeah, that's true. We should be proud. चलिए कुछ क्वेश्चन से देख लेते हैं. What advantage over an aquatic organism does a terrestrial organism have with regards to obtaining oxygen? So terrestrial organism, they get their oxygen directly from the environment, whereas the aquatic organism, they have to obtain the oxygen which is dissolved in the water. So that is a very tough task. That is why the respiration in the aquatic elements is much faster than those staying in the terrestrial. What is the different ways in which glucose is oxidized to produce energy in the various organisms? So we'll draw the diagram of ATP where ATP was present, and let me reduce the size. How to do it? I don't know. So let's leave. Okay. So how is oxygen and carbon dioxide transported in human beings? So this is transported using a substance called as hemoglobin. So how the lungs designed in human beings to maximize the area of the exchange of gases? The lungs pumps up and it produces more area for the proper respiration. ठीक है, अब यहाँ पे है transportation. ट्रांसपोर्टेशन इन द ह्यूमन बीइंग। ट्रांसपोर्टेशन का मतलब क्या होता है? ट्रांसपोर्टेशन का मतलब होता है ले जाना, टू कैरी। ठीक है, एक्टिविटी फिलहाल हम स्किप करते हैं, हम आते हैं सीधे पॉइंट पे। So यहाँ पे we have seen in the previous section that blood transportation of food transports food, oxygen and waste materials in our bodies. In class 9 we learned about blood being a fluid connective tissue. Blood consists of a fluid medium called plasma in which the cells are suspended. Plasma transports foods, carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste in dissolved form. Oxygen is carried by the red blood corpuscles. Many other substances like salts and are also transported by the blood. We thus need a pumping organ to push blood around the body, a network of tubes to reach all the tissues, and a system in place to ensure that this network can be repaired if damaged. और पंप हार्ट के बारे में देखते हैं। तो यहाँ पे एक हार्ट है जहाँ पे ये अरोटा हो गया, ये वेना कावा, ये अपर बॉडी राइट आर्टरियम, वेना कावा फ्रॉम द लोअर बॉडी यानी ये दूसरा चैम्बर हो गया, राइट वेंट्रिकल्स, सेप्टम डिवाइडिंग वॉल्स यानी ये वॉल इसलिए डिवाइड किया जाता है ताकि जो ऑक्सीजन और कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड है वो मिक्सअप ना हो। लेफ्ट वेंट्रिकल, लेफ्ट आर्टरियम, पल्मोनरी वेन्स, पल्मोनरी आर्टरीज। तो ये सारे कुछ जो हैं ये किसके डायग्राम हैं? ये हार्ट के डायग्राम है। हार्ट यानी हृदय हिंदी में कहते हैं। ठीक है, हार्ट पंप द हार्ट इज अ मस्कुलर ऑर्गन व्हिच इज बिग एज आवर फीस्ट एंड ये हो गया ओके मुट्ठी। Because both oxygen and carbon dioxide have to be transported by the blood, the heart has different chambers to prevent the oxygen-rich blood from mixing with the blood containing carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide-rich blood has to reach the lungs for the carbon dioxide to be removed, and the oxygenated blood of the lungs has to be brought back to the heart. This oxygen-rich blood is less pumped to the rest of the body. You can follow this process step by step. Oxygen-rich blood from the lungs comes to the thin-walled upper chamber of the heart to the left atrium. The left atrium releases when it collecting the blood. It then contracts for the next chamber. The left ventricle relaxes, so the blood is transported to it. When the muscle left ventricles contracts in the turn, the blood is pumped out in the body. Deoxygenated blood comes from the body to the upper chamber of the right. The right atrium relaxes as the right atrium contracts. The corresponding lower chamber, right ventricles dilates. This transferred blood to the left ventricle, which in pump transforms into the lungs of the oxygenation. Since the ventricles have to pump blood in the various organs, they have thicker muscle walls than that atria do. Valves ensure that blood do not flow backward and when the atria of the ventricles contract. ठीक है, ये देखिए ये है सिमेट्रिक रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड एक्सचेंज ऑफ ऑक्सीजन। तो यहाँ पे पल्मोनरी आर्टरी टू लंग्स है, वेना कावा है, फिर हम बॉडी, यहाँ वेन्स जो नस है, यहाँ पे आर्टरी है, ये बॉडी है ये वाला हिस्सा ओके, इसको कहते हैं अरोटा, इसको पल्मोनरी फ्रॉम द लंग्स ये है। तो ऑक्सीजन एंटर द ब्लड इन द लंग्स. The separation of the right side and the left side of the heart is useful to keep oxygenated and deoxygenated blood from mixing. Such separation allows a high efficient supply of oxygen to the body. This is useful in animals that have high energy needs such as birds and mammals, which constantly use energy to maintain their body temperature. In animals that do not use energy for this purpose, the body temperature depends on the temperature in the environment. Such animals like amphibians or many reptiles have three-chambered heart and tolerate some mixing of oxygen and deoxygenated blood stream. Fishes, on the other hand, have only two chambers to their heart, and the blood is pumped to the gills, is oxygenated there, and passed directly to the rest of the body. Thus, blood goes only one up through the heart in the fish during the one cycle of passes through the body. On the other hand, it does go through the heart twice during its cycle in the vertebrate. This is known as double circulation. तो double circulation कहते हैं जिसमें कि heart दो बार फ्लो करता है। चलिए नेक्स्ट टॉपिक है ये ब्लड प्रेशर है। तो जो ब्लड प्रेशर होता है वो 180 से 120 के बीच में होता है। तो 80 को हम लोग मानते हैं कि लोअर ब्लड प्रेशर और 120 हाई। ठीक है, चलिए आगे देखते हैं। The tubes, the blood vessels. Arteries are the vessels which carry blood away from the heart to the various organs of the body. Since the blood emerges from the heart under high pressure, the arteries have thick elastic walls veins carry the blood from different organs and bring it back to the heart. They do not need thick walls because the blood is no longer under pressure. Instead, they have valves that ensure that blood flows only in one direction. On reaching an organ or tissue, the artery divides into smaller valves to bring the blood in contact with all the individual cells. The smallest vessels have walls which are one cell thick and are called capillaries. Exchange of material between the blood and the surrounding cell take place across the thin wall. Thus, capillaries then join together to form veins that convey the blood away from the organ or the tissue. ठीक है, ये हमने कुछ देखा. Maintenance by platelets. What happens if the system or tube develops a leak? Think about situation when we are injured and start bleeding. Naturally, the loss of blood from the system has to be minimized. In addition, leakage would lead a loss of pressure, which would reduce the efficiency of the pumping system. To avoid this, blood has platelet cells which circulate around the body and plug these leaks by helping to clot the blood at the points of injury. यानी जब blood leak करता है तो उसको क्लॉट करने का काम करता है so that further blood loss ना हो. lymph, अब lymph के बारे में देखते क्या. lymph, there is another type of fluid also involved in the transportation. This is called lymph or tissue fluid. Though the process present in the walls of the capillary, some amount of plasma, protein, and blood cells escape through the intercellular tissues to form tissue fluid or lymph. It is similar to the plasma of the blood but colorless and contains protein. Lymph drains into the lymphatic capillaries from the intercellular space, which to form large lymph vessels that finally open into the large veins. Lymph carries digestive and absorbed fat from the intestine and the drain excess fluid from the extras in the blood. ठीक है, ये कुछ था lymph का. अभी देखेंगे transportation in plant. We have discussed earlier how plants can take in simple compounds such as CO2 and photosynthesis energy stored in their chlorophyll containing organs, namely leaves. Other kind of raw material needed for the building plant bodies will also have to be taken up separately. For plants, the soil is the nearest and the richest source of raw materials like nitrogen, phosphorus, and other minerals. Absorptions of these substances therefore occur through the planting out of the soil, namely roots. If the distance between the soil containing organs and the chlorophyll containing organs are small, energy and the raw materials can easily diffuse to all the parts of the plant body. But if the distance becomes large because of the change in the plant body, it is an diffusion process not sufficient to provide raw materials and leaves energy in the roots. A proper system of transportation therefore is essential in such situations. Energy needs different body designs. Plants do not move, and the plant's bodies have a large proportion of the dead cells of the many slow tissues, as the plants have low energy needs and can use relatively slow transport system. The distance over which the transport system have to operate, however, can be very large in plants such as tall trees. Plant transport system will move energy stores on the leaf and the raw material from roots. These two pathways are constructed as independent organisms conducting tubes. On the xylem moves water and minerals obtained from the soil. The other phloem transport produces photosynthesis from the leaves, which they are synthesized to other parts of the plant. We have studied the structure of these tissues detailed in class 9, transportation of water. So how does water gets transported? Okay, so maybe this is page number 108 and we'll do till this in this video, and the next will continue. Okay, so transport of xylem, tissue, vessels, and trachea of these roots, stems, and leaves are interconnected to form continuous system of water conducting channels reaching all the parts of the plant. At the root cells in the contact with the soil activity takes up, so in this creates a difference in the concentration of the ions between the roots and the soils. Water therefore moves into the roots from the soil to limit the difference. This means that there is steady movement of water into the root xylem, creating a column of the water that is steady pushing towards the. However, this pressure by itself is unlikely to be enough to move water over the heights and the water commonly seen in the plants. Plants use another strategies to move water in the xylem pods to the highest point of the plant body. तो 108 तक हमने किया है. 108. The next video will continue. Okay, so फिलहाल इतना ही के लिए रहने देते हैं. वीडियो ज़्यादा लंबा होगा. Okay, so till then keep watching, keep learning and पढ़ते रहो. Thanks a lot.